Hey, hello gang. For those of you who missed the shenanigans of the last 10 minutes, consider yourselves lucky. You can go back and watch it if you want. I'm not going to explain what happened. Other than that was crazy, and it was a first. And I virtually disassembled my entire studio at a frantic rate, as you can imagine. And then finally found it right on the floor, right at my feet. Thank goodness, I don't think I stepped on it, so. Whew! You know it's live broadcasting when the crazy things happen. All right, whew, I'm finishing cleaning off my palette over here. All right, I'll get official. So this is something you don't see very often. This is Dan's Art of Vintage number 13. You can read the rest, but way down here at the bottom, take 2. That doesn't happen very often. Whew. All right, I was just starting. Are you guys in the right place? I'll move you in a little bit. I was just starting to do an experiment on Sarah's glasses. And I'm going to very carefully put on my second pair of glasses. I've been working for about the last hour without you, thank you very much, and to get her face from where it was yesterday to where it is now. And it's a pretty good likeness. It's right now it's at the point, and unfortunately I'm going to be gone all weekend painting in Florida. I hope to do a broadcast. I'll take all my stuff. If I can squeeze it in on Saturday, I will. So the next thing I'm going to do, I haven't touched his face at all today, and not as much yesterday. So he's 2 sessions behind her right now, and she's still not finished. Again, pretty typical. She's a little bit too crispy right now, a little bit too hard-edged here and there. So I've been trying to soften it. Anyway, the next thing I'm going to do is take a picture with my phone of her face, of her painting. And then in my phone, I'll put the painting and the photo next to each other. Got it? In a collage app. Then I'll turn them both backwards so I get a mirror image, and then I'll see a lot of mistakes, and I'll make corrections from there. But that'll all be next week. At the moment, here's the experiment. I went and got a tool from my etching kit upstairs, and I'm going to try to scratch or etch her glasses. I'm going to bring you in as close as I can here. Hang on, let me try to get you a little bit better. I know it's an extreme angle. Well, let's see if I can make it less. You're going to be right in my way, in other words. But hey, you're used to it, aren't you? You're used to being in my way. All right. Bear with me just a minute. I'll make a few more adjustments. All right. There we go. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So this is a tool from etching. All of this paint is dry. All the flesh tone here is wet. So I'm going to try to keep my hand off that. But as you can probably see, from the photograph, that the rim of her glasses, the rims are primarily white. And at the moment in my painting, they're primarily dark. So what I'm doing here is scratching all the way down to the gouache, scratching through all the paints, all the layers of paint that are on the painting right now. Now this is kind of ironic because I just said to you a few minutes ago that at the moment my painting is too hard-edged and I'm going to have to soften it. Okay, so do you see the irony? Here I am creating, well, in a sense, extreme hard edge, except that I'm kind of being careful not to. I'm actually letting the scratching tool skitter across the much of the texture of the canvas. Oh, here's a problem. How to get the sawdust, the debris off? That works pretty well. All right, and as I said, I think I've only done this once before, but I might be forgetting. I've done a lot of things. Been an artist for a long time and tend to forget. Oh yeah, I actually did that. Did that back in '06. But so far, I'm looking at it. I'm quite happy with the effect. I can come back and do more later if I choose to do so. But because it's jittery, because it's not a perfectly clean line, it still has a little bit of energy and character to it. I'm assuming you can see that. All right, I'm going to leave that, take off. I'm happy to say I still have both lenses in my glasses. And let's back out here, and I'm going to, I'll put this tool, oh, you know what, that's funny. No, I was going to say I already had one in my painting tools, but I don't. All right, false alarm. Hello, gang, good to have you back. Thanks for joining me again. That was funny. That was terrible. Oh, Tiago in Brazil. Tell me what kind of brush you need. Let me send one to you. All right, so let me get this reference out of the way then. And I have the reference to the broader painting right there above me on the easel. And really the only reason I'm doing background is because I want to do a quick broadcast today. And as I said, I already worked on Sara for about an hour, and she still needs work, but I'm tired of her. Sorry, Jim. Every artist knows exactly what I mean. Let's do some background. And this is what I call the final edit layer, even though it is not the final layer. It used to be, for many years it was, but it's not anymore. And there's basically three places to start. One is at the focal point. Well, that's the faces, so that's out on this one. Focal point, the lightest area or the furthest away area. Those are the most common options. And yeah, I think I'm actually going to do the traditional. So what I'm going to do is the sky. This is plain old traditional oil painting, which is, since it's an essentially an opaque medium, traditional oil painting says you paint from the front to the back. And if it's an outdoor landscape scene, then the furthest away object, of course, is always the sky. So I'm over here leaning over my palette, trying to mix up the perfect shade of phthalo blue, mostly white, of course, white and phthalo blue for the light part of the sky. And I'm just going to do a little bit here for reasons that I'll tell you in a minute. I want to see if that looks to me like the right shade. It's pretty close. And I'm not going by the photograph here, because the photograph is not that good, just as most of the photographs that you and I paint from, right, are not all that great, usually. All right, I think that'll work. Now, here's a important tip. I'm going to keep these brushes and that little pile of paint that I have on my palette. I'm going to keep them all ready to go. And I'm going to switch to some larger brushes a little bit. And I'm going to mix up a darker blue. Here's why. There's a very important rule that says darks first, lights last. This especially applies. Now, some of you guys, and let me mix up paint. Some of you guys need to hear this, because this is one of those things that I repeat, I rant and rave about all the time. And yet I find, not any of you guys, but I find artists who are far enough along in their painting journey that they should not ought to be still be making this mistake. Darks first, lights last. This specifically pertains to blended, graduated colors, like the sky, dark to light. Of course, it applies to faces. Darks first, lights last. It applies to almost everything. But I often see paintings where someone's done it the other way around. Put a light here, and then did darker. Now, it's going to be hard for me to explain exactly why that is wrong. It's not wrong because I say so. It's wrong because it looks bad. And until you develop the visual understanding acuity to discern why that looks bad, just take my word for it. That's all you can do. It doesn't look good. No. I have waxed eloquent in other places about how the human eye enjoys seeing light paint on top of dark paint, but we do not enjoy seeing dark paint on top of light paint. Now, again, until you've developed the visual sensitivity to go, oh, you know what? He's right. Until you can see that for yourself, just trust me. Okay? We don't like to see dark, opaque, I'll throw that in there, dark, opaque paint on top of lighter paint. We do like to see, the human eye likes to see light paint on top of dark. When we're blending here, then I've gone back, I did a little bit down there just for a test. I often do this, by the way. But now I'm back up at the top of the sky, so I'm doing darker blue, right? The mistake would be to blend light, darker, because some of those dark strokes will come lap over on top of the light ones, and that's what we don't like. All right, let me just paint. Try not to sound so defensive. Mixing up a slightly lighter blue now. I enjoy painting skies. Painting skies are a challenge for me for an unusual reason. This goes back to my youth. I love looking at skies. I'm assuming that if you're an artist, you're a lot like me. You're the one person in the car that says, oh, baby, look at that sunset. Or whatever, if you're with your baby, right? Oh, man, look at that sky. Oh, that sky's so gorgeous. Is anybody out there like me? Any of you artists? And my wife goes, uh-huh. She's a good wife, don't get me wrong. She's just not likely to be quite as crazy about, golly, look at that sky. Look at that cloud. Indeed, I used to resist the notion that artists were more sensitive because I didn't like the sound of, artists are crybabies or something like that. So I resisted that notion for a long time. several years ago now, I finally stopped resisting it because I realized, dang, it is true. Artists tend to be more sensitive. Literally, our senses are more sensitive. We see colors other people don't see. This is literally true. Anyway, so we are more sensitive. We do see other things that other people don't see. Now, how did I get on that subject? Oh yeah, I was saying why skies are a challenge for me. So I love skies. I have studied skies, like many of you have, no doubt, very, very carefully over the decades. And because of all that study, I can render the heck out of a sky and clouds. I mean, it's really fun. I could do a photorealistic, be very happy. I would be very happy doing nothing in my career but painting photorealistic skies. Well, maybe that's not entirely true, but pretty close to true. So when it comes to painting skies in my chosen abstract, realistic style, I have to be careful not to slip into realistic, tight realism, which is very easy for me. So that's why skies are challenging. And that's also, painting with two hands helps me in that regard a fair amount, because it tends to keep me looser and painting out of the right side of my brain and so on than if I were just painting with one hand. So there you go. The skies are hard because the clouds, the sky needs to be believable, but I don't want it tight or too realistic. It'd be out of keeping. All right, so I'm not quite back to my original color, so I need to keep going a little bit more here. Do you understand now why I put this color right here? Why I did it first? Because I determined, yeah, that's my target color. That's what I'm going to be aiming for. And I'm not quite there yet. The last layer I did right above that is a little too cool, a little too ultramarine, and not quite light enough. So I'm going to add some tiny bit of green and some more titanium white to that mix. So there, a generous dab of titanium white, a tiny bit of I don't know what kind of green that is. I don't care about greens. I use them. I just don't care what color. I don't have a specific. I all over the map on greens. By the way, you know that, don't you? That pretty much all artists know that the sky gets lighter as we get closer to the horizon, right? Everybody knows that, okay? And I'm assuming you know this too, that it also gets warmer, has more, well, there's more dust in the more atmosphere, so it gets grayer. That'd be a legitimate way to put it. But it also often gets yellower, or in this case, greener, as it gets closer to the horizon. And once again, pretty much every, intermediate level artist has learned that the sky gets lighter. Everybody knows that, but most early journey painters tend to not do it enough. They do it, they don't do it enough. So somebody listening today, or in the subsequent viewings, please pay attention, because this probably applies to you. You know about the sky getting lighter, right? But you don't exaggerate enough. You need to push it further. So in fact, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And of course, as with every step in the painting process, the energy of my brush strokes is actually slightly more important than a perfect rendering. All right, let me pause there just for a minute, because I bet this, what I've got on my brushes right now, is going to be pretty close to the color of the top layer, the furthermost horizon of water. Pretty close. I'm darkening it ever so slightly and adding a tiny bit of blue to it. Okay, this is for just conveniently, since I've already got a couple brushes loaded with light blue paint. I might as well go ahead and start the water to save, just to be a little bit efficient in the painting process. Again, energy of stroke, more important than absolutely precise accuracy for this style of painting, right? If I were doing hyper-realistic, whatever you want to call it, photorealistic, extreme, whatever, that would not be the case. Then I'd have a smaller brush and I'd be sticking out my tongue and doing this, right? And I'm quite definitely not doing that. Also, I try to let as much of my underpainting show through as possible, because the underpainting, as you know, is made up of many layers of acrylics. Never use your fingers. Many layers of acrylics and oil, and a glaze of oil. Forgive me just a minute. I need to see if this horizon, does it show up between? Oh, it does. Good. Hang on. So I need to make just a little mark right there. I'm not sure that will show up in the painting, but it's there anyway. For future reference, his bow tie just about blocks it out. I try to let as much of the underpainting show through because it's so interesting. Right there, by the way, actually there and there, I am putting into practice what I talked about way at the beginning of this painting for just a little bit. If you or I were standing looking at this scene and we drew our vision across the top of that water, we would determine, we would see, we would experience that horizon line would appear absolutely razor sharp. No fuzziness at all. Razor sharp. And fairly high contrast. All right? This is one of those strange phenomena in painting. Painting seascapes in particular. You don't want to paint it sharp. Now you want it to be straight. I used a T-square you saw a minute ago. There's actually a pencil line I can still see. So I want it to be straight, but I don't want it to be razor sharp. I want it to have a little bit of fuzz and irregularity to it. You could say, how come? If it's sharp, why don't you paint it sharp? Well, the short answer is because it looks bad. The longer answer, I don't have the energy for, has to do with how the human brain actually processes the visual field, all the visual information that comes into it. I've answered that before. I'll answer it again another time. I just don't have the energy today. Just don't feel like doing it. So most of what hits our retina is out of focus. This is partly related to that. That's not the only explanation, but it's part of it. And to make this line fuzzy actually helps the painting feel slightly more realistic without being realistic, if you will. All right, and right now with a rag, I'm in here and messing up some of those marks even more. By the way, this has become a practice of mine. into the sky. I wouldn't call it a principle or a rule, but I would call it a very useful practice, and that is this. Almost every time that you put paint on the canvas with brushes, traditional application of painting, after you put paint on the brushes, come back immediately thereafter, usually, ideally before you forget, and mess up those marks in some way, either with a scratch or a scrape, or like one of the most common things I do is I'll take these brush handles are excellent for scratching. They just accidentally happen to be just right. Or take a dry brush, run it through it, take a rag, rub it. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't have the energy to go any further than that. And I am not going to paint much longer because I'm already late to my other job today. But before I go, let me do a little bit of these boats. Yeah, way over here, so I'll zoom you in there. Lots of chats. Wow. Michael, I'm envious of your snow. We got a tiny bit of snow this year, and that was exciting. I'm one of those crazy people that always prays for snow. Yes, Lord, let it snow. I love snow. It's just so beautiful. All right, so I think you can see I'm just now here practicing what I preach by putting down a mark and then messing it up. This would be a good time to, okay, good, picked up the perfect palette knife. This would be a good time to do some marks with a palette knife. Why? Variety. All right, I'm just going to say real quickly, of all the principles of design, which is different from elements of design, of all the principles, the king, the primary, most important principle of design is variety, the principle of variety. We love to see in every respect. So I'm using a palette knife because it makes a different kind of mark than the brush does. Also, because there's a whole bunch of boats back there, this falls under that rule that anytime you're painting a highly repetitive subject, you need to invent a number of different ways for rendering that subject. If it's, and again, something that repeats, as this does, a bunch of boats, right? So you don't want to render each boat in the same way. Variety. All right, I've just mixed up a medium gray. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to start my forest of masts here. And that is indeed the way I have done a lot of marina paintings over there, dozens, maybe 100, I don't know, lots of coastal paintings, mostly here in North Carolina. And my trick for rendering masts is see it as a sea or a forest. I'm not going by any means. I'm not going to try to copy, the photograph mast for mast. In my opinion, that would be ridiculous, a ridiculous waste of energy. What I do want to do is capture the essence of the photograph, and I'll actually get closer to that essence by not trying to copy, render mast for mast. That, again, I'm sure that hyper-realist would do that. But I just want to give the viewer just enough information so that their brain essentially finishes the picture and says, oh, yeah, a bunch of boats, a bunch of mass. I might just do one more thing before I leave for the day. I'm going to miss you all. I'm going to be gone, like I said. Leaving tonight for Florida. And won't be back till Tuesday evening, probably. Going with my wife, Nancy, of course. We look forward to it. We're going to have a fun time riding together, driving together, sightseeing a little bit. But I do feel bad that I won't get back to this painting till probably Wednesday. All right, I'm going to do one more thing before I go. Again, up here in the same area. And because I've got a good opportunity to demonstrate a principle. First of all, here's a rule. A rule. You can it's almost impossible to overdo atmospheric perspective. Okay, that's one of the rules of landscape painting. Almost impossible to over-exaggerate atmospheric perspective. So this row of trees back there, I'm not sure I've got the ideal color. It's just a kind of a brownish gray at the moment because it's fall of the year. Let me do a little bit and see if I think that's the right color. It'll do for starters, I think. I'll probably vary it slightly as I go along. All right, but here's one of the principles that I'm practicing right now. Because you traditionalists, those of you, no, let me say that a different way. Those of you in the early first half of your painting journey where you're learning to paint stuff that looks like stuff, you would say to me, no, you're doing that backwards. You should have painted the trees first and the boats in front of the trees. And I go, very good, very good. You are right where you ought to be in your journey. By the way, there's a little scratching. That's nice. That was a nice scratch right there. But I'm not doing that, am I? I'm painting something further away on top of something up close. Let me think about I'm going to go with this color for just a little bit more. Here again, one of the rules of what I call real painting as opposed to hyper-realist or very realist painting is whenever possible, you look for opportunities and excuses to paint objects in the reverse order of distance. Whew. In other words, you look for excuses to paint something that's far away after you've painted something that's closer. The classic example of this is sky holes. If you're familiar with the concept, you probably are. That's the classic, right? Everybody knows the sky is further away than the foliage of the tree, right? Everybody knows that. Yes, they do. But sky holes, when done properly, just look so cool. And part of the reason they look cool is because they're following this, I'm going to say, little known trick, which is paint around stuff. That's another way to express what I'm doing here. I changed color, by the way, here just a minute ago to a slightly more orange brown tan. I could explain why do you want to paint stuff in the reverse order of their distance? I'll do it another day. I've explained it. It has to do with how the eye processes reality and processes a painting. And it is a way to achieve, a way to give the viewer aesthetic pleasure. That's all I'm going to say about it right now. I've explained it before, and I will explain it again. I just don't want to do it right now. I must be in a very lazy mood today. Part of it is I'm like I said, already a little bit late to my other job. My losing the lens didn't help any. Okay, I'm going to do just a little bit more of this distant. I'm not going to finish all the way over here. I'm going to do just a little bit more, and do just one or two more quick things before I quit for the day. Okay, so this looks quite a bit better. The next thing I'm going to do, I like the underpainting. This blue here is a result of many layers of acrylics and oil, and I really like that color. I'm going to try to mix up an opaque version of that color. This is, by the way, one of the things that I do most often in my final edit. It has to be slightly lighter. Why? Right? Because we don't like to see dark paint on top of light. We like to see light even slightly. In fact, that's our favorite, is to see slightly lighter paint on top of slightly darker. Okay, so I need a little bit more phthalo in that mix. And then it's too dark, so a little bit more titanium. So this matching what's already on the canvas is one of my favorite tricks in the final edit layer. Is this wet? Oh, it is. Good, 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 good. I want that because I'm going to wipe some of that off. Some of the light blue right here that I did earlier, nothing wrong with having done it, but I'm just going to mess it up a little bit. I want to go back to a slightly darker blue right there. All right, let's see how close I am now. Okay, that'll do. Thank you very much. Do you see me rolling my brush there, by the way? Why do I do that? Variety, the most important principle among the principles of design, is variety. So you want to make many different kinds of marks with your brushes. Including scratching and so forth. I'm going to change this color to greener. I'm going to be a little bit brave right now. In fact, it made it more green than I expected, but I like it. Generally speaking, people would rather see yes color than no color. Generally speaking, the human eye would rather see slightly exaggerated color. All things being equal. Again, this does not apply to the hyper-realistic folks at all. Generally speaking, though, that's one of the downsides of doing very realistic paintings, is our eyes really enjoy color. And if you're doing realism, you're tending to diminish or mute color. All right, almost done. One more thing on the water. I'm just wiping off my brushes here just with a tissue. Stick them in some pure titanium white. But my brushes are dirty, right? So I'm not going to get a pure white, but close enough. I can do just a little bit more sparkle or reflection. And yes, let's go back to the palette knife for a little bit of reflection. Not much. You really wouldn't see, I'm actually exaggerating here, you really wouldn't see much of this kind of reflection at this distance. But shh, people don't know that. By the way, I am working on, as we speak, I've taken a couple whacks at it and just haven't finished yet. I'm working on a a definitive list of play of light. Okay, so I've taught for decades that the most important element, the most important aspect, I guess, of a painting is play of light. And I've come up with a number, in years previous, I've come up with a number of sort of expressive descriptions, creative, analogous descriptions of what that means. But here in the last several months, I thought, what the heck? Why don't I just tell people straight up, it's a list of like 10 or 12 things. Here's a list of examples of play of light, stuff that people like to see in a painting. And one of those is reflection. People like, that's part of the reason we like paintings with water. I mean, and look, I mean, you know, think of the classic car ad, you know, the Cadillac on the showroom floor. What is the showroom floor? It's wet or it's shiny. The classic streets of Paris scene. What are the streets? Absolutely, they're wet, so they're reflective. All right? Yeah. So just understand, and if you understand that and incorporate that, like I'm doing right here, your paintings will be better. They'll bring a slightly greater level of aesthetic pleasure to the viewers, simply because of the reflection. So all these masks reflecting are not at all in the photograph, not even hinted at in the photograph. But that little bit of reflection will make people happy. Now, okay, I'm going to do one more thing. I keep saying one, again, like the Baptist preacher. One more thing before I go. And that is in the sky now, around those masks. And mix up an even slightly lighter bluish green so that I can do some of the lightest bits of sky. Again, after I've painted the mast, right? Because I've already told you, I haven't told you completely why, but I've already told you, whenever possible, another word for this is you want to negative paint. That is to say, like at the moment, I'm defining some of these masts a little bit. I'm painting the masts. I've got mask. America, the whole world is mask on the brain, don't we? I'm defining these masts by painting around them, by painting the sky around them. One word for that would be negative painting, right? So always in your painting, always look for an excuse to do some negative painting. And all I've said today is that because it will create a heightened aesthetic pleasure in the mind of your viewer. I could explain more, but I don't feel like it. I've done so elsewhere. Go through some of my videos. If you watch enough stuff, you'll hear the same thing over and over and over. Our eyes get a kick out of it, of seeing things painted, again, in the reverse order of distance. So like the sky, everybody knows the sky is further away than the mass, right? Nobody is confused and thinks that the sky is in front of these masks. Nope. But our eye also picks up very subtly, whether we know it or not, we can see that some of the sky was painted after the mass. And that creates a momentary flicker of confusion. I'm giving some of the reasons now. And then the confusion is resolved in our mind, and that resolution is experienced as aesthetic pleasure. Since I've got this light set, I'm going to do a little bit more. I guess I'm doing quite a bit more. There's enough sky up here that I think a little bit more energy. Yeah, this will do. All right, so this area of the painting, not the pylons, not the posts that are in front of it, but that area of the painting is probably all finished. All right, I might do a little bit more to it, but it can certainly stand as it is right now. So thank you for your time. It's been fun. Thanks for putting up with my ridiculous issues of losing a lens out of my glasses. And thanks for coming back. Let me see what other chats you guys are leaving before I go here today. Ooh, a lot of chats. Yeah, David, I've not done with his head at all. It's the wrong shape. So and that we've talked about that already. Yep. Oh, Uncle, yeah, that's just looseness. That's just a part of the fuzz layer that will get mostly obliterated in the final edit layers. David, good to see you again. Thank you. Hello, Molia Jesse. Thank you for everybody for your wonderful chats. It's fun. I enjoy your company. And now I'm off to my big mural job. It's wonderful, but we're behind schedule. And I will look forward to, I might be able to broadcast on Sunday. I hope so. On Saturday, at the wedding, till the music cranks up. Otherwise, it'll be next Wednesday. Thank you.